talker of the day is Ange Hammond. And Ange is from Landcare Australia. So Landcare Australia is a national not-for-profit organisation established 35 years ago that supports the landcare community through funding, capacity building on-ground projects and promoting landcare achievements. Working collaboratively, Landcare Australia enhances biodiversity, strengthens food and farming systems, and fosters resilient communities. Today's speaker, Ange Hammond, grew up on, I'm going to mangle this, Kamilaroi country. I'm actually, Kamilaroi, oh my gosh, don't laugh, I'm actually from New Zealand and I still stumble over some of these names. My husband laughs at me constantly. Out near Hebel, Queensland, on a grazing property. Now as Landcare Agriculture Project Manager, Ange works to connect landcare with agriculture, fostering sustainable practices and cross-collaboration. Ange enjoys advocating for producers, helping drive positive change for land and industry. Over to you. Big circle goes forward.
I'm a bit taller than Ange, can you hear me? Okay, 10 minutes and I know she'll crack me off really quickly because Ange is the best manager for this AASF. She be small but she be feisty, or fierce as Shakespeare said, but she is doing a great job with this AASF. So glad to be here stepping behind Ange. Yeah, my dream job is the Landcare Ag Program Manager. I work for Landcare Australia. When I was at uni, I actually did a whole thing for when I was at uni about Landcare. It was quite new back then and all those years ago, so I'm really glad to be working with Landcare Australia right now. So the Landcare Ag Program, basically we work on the ground with our producers. I'm just making sure, have I got one line up on that picture? Oh, not quite. Righto. Sorry, just getting the gist of things. So, very broadly, quick bit of background about the Landcare Ag Program. So the Landcare Ag Program aims to enhance the sustainability and resilience of Australian ag. It provides independent, scientifically robust information and resources, scientifically robust being very important to us. Facilitates cross-cultural knowledge sharing between First Nations and non-Indigenous producers, very also important to us. It's a very important sphere for Landcare Australia, and supports the adoption of environmentally sustainable practices while optimising agricultural productivity. And one key thing we do all work with, adapt to changing ag industry and consumer expectations. So that's the Landcare Ag Program in a very small nutshell. Just on the broader Landcare Australia activities, so Landcare Australia more broadly, our organisation works with some great corporate partners. You can see a few photos there from some of the partners we work with. So the corporate partnerships that we work with create substantial impact on biodiversity, sustainability and innovation. And all of these projects have seen great improvements on water security, habitat creation, riparian zone improvements on farm and reduced energy consumption on farms. So the Landcare Ag journey so far. So this journey started a while ago. It used to be called the Landcare Farming Program. We didn't want to be exclusive to graziers, so we've now called it Landcare Ag. No, the Landcare Farming Program was a collaboration between the National Landcare Network and Landcare Australia. So that began about 5 years ago. So that journey, as part of that journey very broadly, we ran 30 carbon accounting workshops with Integrity Ag. We've already heard that organisation mentioned a few times today. Stephen Wiedemann's doing some great work out of Queensland. So we ran those 30 workshops. We then ran 30 natural capital accounting workshops with Accounting for Nature. Out of those workshops, we touched 620 producers. The very broad, overarching feedback from those workshops and action comment statement was really that producers were generally interested in both of these topics and understood how important they were, but required greater clarity around action. That's been repeated a few times today. There's a lot of information out there and opportunities, but they just need to know more to engage. So from those desktop reviews and those workshops and the feedback to us from that, and I'm happy to share any of our information from those reviews we did because there's some really interesting stuff came out of it. But out of that, we then decided, okay, let's work with the producers and actually ground truth their questions, their key questions out of that. So we ran 13 demo projects all around Australia, covered about 300,000 hectares. with producers, looking at their questions around carbon, biodiversity, or both of those things. They were well received and got some really great information once again for us. Out of the back of all of that, probably not out the back of the demo sites, in conjunction with the demo sites, we've now run 18 face-to-face workshops with Accounting for Nature, looking at biodiversity. So face-to-face awareness raising workshops. I'll talk more about them in the next slide, but they basically came up, we had one group who did the desktop review and said, we'd like to know more about biodiversity. Richard Stevens from Greater Sydney LLS said, look, can we run a face-to-face? We did it. Our industry talks really well, as we all know, and then we got feedback, oh, we'd like to do one too. You know, could you support us to do one? So 18 workshops later. As well as that, our industry, and it's been said today, we need to know more about our emissions on farm, and so we've had a lot of producers reach out and groups and say, look, can you support us to understand that a bit more? And so we've been lucky enough to work with Ruminati. We're not saying they're the one and only, like Accounting for Nature are not the one and only, and nor Integrity Ag, but these are good organisations doing good things and working with producers to at least understand things a bit better. So that's our work. Sorry about the busy slide, but that map shows you there's a number of maroon squares there. That's where we've run our Accounting for Nature face-to-face workshops, awareness raising workshops, one day, and they've been really well received, and it's just been getting that ecological language happening. So we all speak the language and understand that actually ecologists, like my furry friends that I work with, I'm talking about Rowan there, but people who are ecologists and people who are producers, we're often talking about the same thing, but we might use different words, and that can disempower people sometimes. But if you understand a common language and that we're all working toward a common goal, it actually supports us to take next steps. We're also working with Farming for the Future, Gulf Savannah NRM up in northern Queensland, the Grower Group Alliance over in WA, and Perth NRM. Farm Lab we've been working with around really great soils projects. So there's a Farm Lab UQ project that's now sampled over 580 properties around Australia around carbon. We've been involved with that. Those photos there, the top photograph is actually the last Accounting for Nature workshop we ran in Charleville. That was really well received. We had producers travel 800 kilometres for that biodiversity workshop. In Charleville. You know, this is the thirst producers have to understand more. The green was obviously not at Charleville, that was at Harden. The brown down the bottom, the Good Winter Feed, that was at Barfield Road Producer Group, which is also on that map. They're a fantastic producer group in Queensland that we worked with around biodiversity. So we're really, you know, trying to reach out to our producers, listen to what they're doing and our groups. Building ideas together, we've evolved an on-farm soil testing an extension program with Farm Lab, Tamworth Regional Landcare Group, and the Northern New South Wales Southern Queensland Drought Hub. This picture shows you a Farm Lab satellite image of a property. Those people on the screen, the top one's obviously me, but the top fellow with the black beard, that's Ned Skeen, who's a soil scientist. The middle fellow with the white beard, handy they got accredited lab, including one sample was sent to South Australia to a microbiology lab. 11 properties and about 25 samples per property later. These producers all got this great data back about normal soil, you know, NPKS, all those normal bulk density, pH, all those normal samples we get taken on farms, and the microbiology. We had to put them in a freezer bag and then we had to post them on a Monday, you know, etc. Get the data back. But then what does that mean? I used to be an agronomist. You stand on the side of a dusty cotton paddock with an inside tech test and try and talk a producer through what it means across their property. It's kind of hard. This is the best Zoom meeting I've ever been on in my life, where we had that property, and so then Wayne, the producer, could say to Ned, those rectangular white boxes show the samples and the results. What does that mean? Why is the pH up on that part of the farm so different to the pH here, etc.? One more minute, so I better go. So anyway, I can tell you more about this. Has been a really incredible process. Where to next for us? We've got an incredible reference group that we're working with at the moment to design our next steps. We're collaborating with industry. We don't want to duplicate or replicate. We're designing monitoring evaluation. We've got Leanne Sheriff in the room here today that's going to help us with that. And we're about to send out an expression of interest for groups to get involved with our next steps. And that should be me. If you need to contact me, you can actually, that QR code will allow you access to our our newsletters that come out, and the EOI will be sent to you, but please reach out to me. I've got so much more to tell, but I'll get off now. Thank you.
All right, well done, Ange. First off the rank, and you did it so well and within time. Thank you. All right, so our next speaker or talker is Katyana Arman, and Katyana is the General Manager of Brand and Integrity from the Australian Wool Exchange, or AWEX. So AWEX is a not-for-profit organisation committed to enhancing the quality, integrity and sustainability of Australian wool, and as a wool producer I love to hear that. AWEX drives key initiatives such as the Australian Wool Sustainability Scheme, the National Wool Declaration, and innovative digital traceability platforms like WoolClip and eBale and ePack. Katyana, as I mentioned, is the General Manager of Brand and Integrity, and in that role she leads efforts to promote sustainability and innovation in the wool industry, with a strong background in marketing and innovation, including roles with global brands like PepsiCo and Diageo. Katyana will share insights into advancing sustainability and integrity within the wool industry through AWEX's initiatives, including its cutting-edge digital tools and sustainability certification. Over to you. Big button goes forward.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'll be talking about today is the Australian Wool Sustainability Scheme. It's a sustainability certification for Australian wool producers, but also for our supply chain. The interesting part about this is that it was born out of the wool industry. It used to be called the Sustainable Integrity Scheme. It was developed in the New England wool growing area of New South Wales, working with some Italian wool processors and fabric makers. They identified the need for sustainability credentials in their markets, and that grew at such a scale that they gifted this sustainability scheme to industry. And at that point, that's when it came into AWEX, and we've been looking after the scheme since 2019. We undertook a review of the scheme that started in 2022. We had some consultation that was led by KPMG, a lot of discussion with our domestic and international supply chain, looking for what was needed from a sustainability certification moving forward. And what came up out of that work was there were a few factors. One of the most important drivers for Australian wool is that a lot of our wool goes to the apparel market, and many of our customers are operating in the EU. So things like the EU Green Claims Directive, multiple regulations that are changing, they all have implications on what certifications need to deliver for them. And this is really about risk mitigation for them. It's also about meeting their requirements and their commitments. Another part that came out through the consultation was just how much certification in the wool supply chain was costing money. It was slowing things down. It was introducing a lot of admin all the way through the supply chain. And that's interesting because it could arguably be reducing the value that growers are getting for their wool, as the supply chain needs to account for these costs further downstream. But also it is raising prices of the end products as well. Traceability, we've heard a lot about it. It's definitely of high need for wool. We are very fortunate in the wool industry to have some really great tools that are industry-wide in terms of eBale and WoolClip, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then the other part that is always very interesting for wool is that it's a highly technical fibre. It's got lots of variability, and for our customers, particularly processors, making sure that the wool is packed in a uniform way, fit for purpose, well documented, minimal contamination is really important to minimise waste and maximise productivity for the industry. And that's the backbone of that is Australian wool classing, which is something that we know is really important for realising value for Australian wool. To no surprise to anyone, I'm sure, a lot of wool customers have made specific commitments around animal husbandry practices, in particular, committing to purchase wool from sheep that have not been mulesed, and being able to buy that with confidence from Australia was really important, and that's where traceability actually works hand in glove to meet those needs for our customers. And similarly, we've had this come up earlier today. It's important to keep the vision on holistic sustainability. A criticism of sustainability certifications in wool can be that it can be a bit of a lightning rod to just the mulesing conversation. And sustainability is so much broader than even caring for animals, and caring for animals is so much broader than just whether or not you mules. So that was something that we knew was really important. Continuity of supply is of interest to our customers, and having a financially resilient industry that protects the productivity and the know-how that's been built over many generations is a really important part of our sustainability credentials. So we thought it was really important that our standard capture that. So where we landed was kind of in 3 points where we had a big change. One, that we just doubled down on what we're here to deliver in terms of a sustainability certification, which is made by the industry for industry, fit for purpose for our climate, our production systems, our regulations, so that it is pragmatic and practical rather than overlaying things that come out of a global market that might not be as well connected to all the things that producers are doing here. With the sustainability space changing so rapidly, it was really important for us to be able to navigate through what a credible certification needs to be over time, and to meet the requirements for our customers at the end of the day as they continue to evolve. So to do that, we stood up an independent expert panel that helped guide us through the science and through the regulations. We're very fortunate to have a few of them in the room today, and that's been a really important addition and strength that we incorporated as we relaunched the program. And the last one, which is really important for all members of the supply chain, was that we felt that it needed to be scalable and fast. Modern business does not move slowly, and for that we really focused on how technology and digital traceability can help unlock that for our supply chain. Our sustainability standard is deliberately aligned to the Sheep Sustainability Framework and the Australian Agricultural Sustainability Framework. In a way, one of our visions is to, at a peak level, for a grower to be able to demonstrate that they are contributing to things like the Sheep Sustainability Framework. I think that's really important. And so where we ended up when we did a review, we relaunched the name of the scheme. It is the Australian Wool Sustainability Scheme, and we have two distinct certifications that growers can achieve, and they only differ on one aspect, which is mulesing status. So sustainable is for a property that meets all of our standards across all of our pillars, which I'll share in a minute, but it is for non-mulesed or ceased mulesed enterprises. Responsible is exactly the same, except it's for growers who are using mulesing for their fly strike risk management with appropriate pain relief. That's the only difference between the two. So what do the standard pillars look like? They're very similar to the Sheep Sustainability Framework, and that's deliberate. We're trying to keep the language really consistent. The one addition that we have in our standard, which is really important for wool, is about clip preparation and integrity. So that's where we have things like wool that needs to be classed by a registered wool classer to the code of practice. That is something that's audited every week, so that buyers can have confidence in the quality of the clip preparation. And the integrity side is really about the data and the traceability of what we're doing with our certification. We thought it was really important that we take the opportunity to showcase Australian wool production in a fair light. Sometimes sustainability certifications can have the opposite effect on Australian wool growers. So we're very mindful of raising the bar on the full spectrum of what caring for sheep is all about. A lot of times it has been really narrowed down to, oh, well, it's non-mills, so therefore you're taking good care of your sheep. And as we all know, sometimes that is not the case. It's not a guarantee that you're caring for your sheep, but also that we are making efforts to really explain to supply chain and brands that for the growers that are choosing to use mulesing with pain relief as part of their fly strike risk management, that is actually caring for your sheep. So that's a part of the role that we've taken on in terms of putting the Australian wool grower in the appropriate light. Another part that we had to assess when we did our review was really what our role was. In the wool supply chain is very long and complex, and a lot of certifications are about chain of custody, more so all the way to finished product. Our main question that we're looking to answer was what we heard from customers. The biggest blind spot that they have is what's happening on farm. So for us, we end at the greasy wool stage. Our certification is all about having high integrity, what we can validate. We didn't have that visibility and that presence all the way through the global supply chain, and we didn't have a credible solution to be able to trace it and trace the sustainability credentials of the entire wool supply chain. So our certification ends at the greasy wool stage. That was a really important change for us, but it is a big change for the market. So we're still working through how that is going to be used by different supply chains. Chain of custody is a really important part of meeting your requirements for anyone that's in these kind of supply chains globally. I will speed up. One thing that has come up quite a bit for us is the idea of regenerative. I'm just going to shortcut it and say when we've assessed this, we really believe that if something is truly sustainable, it has to also be regenerative. There are regenerative practices as part of our standard, but we also felt that it was not the most beneficial thing to start separating, from a marketing point of view, a regenerative wool versus a sustainably certified wool. Because what does that say about sustainably certified wool? So we really do believe that they are one and the same. Our requirements are pretty simple this is for the quality and integrity pillar. We've always had the National Wool Declaration as an important part of our certification, as being prepared by a wool classer and receiving that P certificate. We have two new additions, which is they're now requirements for certification for the wool, and that is to use WoolClip. WoolClip is an on-farm digital data capture platform for Australian wool producers, and to scan an e-pack into WoolClip. All wool packs that come into Australia now are e-packs, which means that they have a QR code at the front and an RFID tag at the back with a unique identifier, which means that every wool bale can be traced digitally, which opens up a lot of efficiency and a lot of confidence for our global supply chain customers. We have more plans to use technology in the future. So we are building what we're calling the Grower Gateway, and we're looking to see how we can have a producer upload evidence of their sustainability outcomes on farm directly, rather than relying on on-farm auditors flying or driving around this very large country. So we're looking to see how we can build verification even more using technology as a benefit. So this is still a work in progress, but we hope that we can get ahead of the verification demands that we expect will keep growing, but it's going to be very difficult and costly to do if we don't find a way to do this kind of at a farm scale. Last three things. We've had some challenges. I'll just share some learnings as we've done our relaunch. We relaunched as the Australian Wool Sustainability Scheme in July this year. The market is quite challenged at the moment. You've got low prices, high costs. It's not the easiest time to sell a benefit of getting sustainably certified. And so for us, that's about really looking at other ways we can demonstrate a value proposition for a sustainability certification to growers. So we are looking at creative ways to do that. We can't control price, and a lot of the times at the moment, it wouldn't be covering the cost of production. So that is a big challenge. We also have some parts of the market who resist technology. They're a bit daunted by it. So we're doing a lot of work to help those growers get their confidence up in terms of using that technology. And the last one, which is a really interesting observation, is that we tend to have a separation between the market here, where a grower will be talking to their selling agent, and our customers. There can be some separation there. In Australia, in the domestic market, we tend to look at a sustainability certification as an opportunity to do some marketing and to differentiate. Our customers don't want us to differentiate. They want one thing that meets their needs. So that's been a really interesting insight for us, and we're looking for ways to communicate and educate the market around this over time. We've had the first of what we'll hope to be a series of really interesting podcasts that are available, so to try to get onto that journey with the market, and then I'm done. Thanks.
Thanks, Kat. Good job. I know it's tough when I'm sitting there going, 3, 2. All right, so our next talker is Paul Kotz. He is the Head of Product and Design from Agricultural Innovation Australia. So the AIA is a not-for-profit company that was established by 15 RDCs to address major cross-sectorial agricultural challenges through joint investment and collaboration. AIA's flagship initiative, the Environmental Accounting Platform, is Australia's first cross-sectorial carbon calculation engine, offering producers and supply chains a standardised and accessible approach to carbon accounting across multiple commodities. Excuse me, starting to lose the voice at the end of the day. So Paul, as I mentioned, is the Head of Product and Design, who, as a certified Scrum product owner, excels at transformational agricultural and environmental research into impactful software products. He leads AIA's development team in enhancing the environmental accounting platform while strategically aligning it with future research, market trends and legislative changes. Welcome to the stage. You've brought your own timer. Big dot goes forward.
Big dot goes forward. Cool. Thanks for the chance to talk. Yeah, cool. I'm going to read this. I'm not really the best at going from memory. So yeah, I recently joined AIA a couple of months ago as the Head of Product and Design. Prior to that, I worked at CSIRO on an initiative called Handprint, not Farmprint. Doing that, I was working on agricultural supply chain sustainability. As a not-for-profit, AIA is a rare and wonderful thing. It's not a startup looking for 10x returns, and it's not a big behemoth either. Rather, AIA is a nimble, purpose-driven team looking to solve big challenges for cross-commodity agriculture. And there are many, many big challenges. Big button goes forward. If you're going to tackle these big challenges in a meaningful way, you need a starting point that makes sense and a plan for maximising impact quickly. To ensure we were on the right track, we underwent a substantial discovery process by listening to producers, further up the supply chain as well, consultants who worked with producers, and also the RDCs that supported producers. It's like 140 plus interviews. That's a lot of chat. We also looked across the globe to see what challenges were common with Australian challenges, and we looked closely at how existing tools, models and frameworks were trying to address those challenges. After the first round of discovery, we identified greenhouse gas emissions accounting as the most appropriate place to begin making a difference. As part of our research into emissions accounting, some major themes appeared. Carbon accounting is confusing and cumbersome, and if you've ever tried to calculate emissions for a mixed farm enterprise, Using spreadsheets, you'll know what I mean. And 85% was the figure I heard yesterday. 85% of Australian farms are mixed farming enterprises, so that's a lot of people impacted by that complexity. Calculators must be constantly maintained and updated, so there's always new learnings coming to light, new research, new emission factors, so on and so forth, and not keeping up puts producers at risks of reporting using wrong numbers. And considering that increasingly high value decisions are being made on those numbers, you want to be up to date. Producers want to keep data where it currently is. So we've heard about this a couple of times today. Farmers are already sort of overworked and suffering from solution fatigue. You pick up a rock and there's some ag tech solution provider saying, "Give me your data." The inconsistent approach and lack of standards makes baselining, benchmarking and decision-making difficult. These were the key things to address, and we decided that the best way to address them was to provide a definitive cross-sectoral carbon calculation engine for agriculture, fisheries and forestry. And it's important to call out the word engine here because we understand that just one single tool is not going to make enough of an impact. So our engine is made up of two main things: a common, consistent and standardised or standardisable way of calculating an emissions footprint, and pre-competitive access to emissions calculation capability. We chose Melbourne Uni's GAF model as the basis for this approach because it was already widely used and there's GAF training programs happening all over the country. It's transparent, so those Excel files, you can look at every single cell and know what it relates to. There are no hidden locked sheets or anything like that you don't understand how it works. Have fun actually getting into that because there's a lot of cells, but it's all there for you to see. Those Excel files are all traceable back to the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory, those equations in that. It's actually straightforward to make updates to, and right now I'm the person responsible for implementing updates to those GAF spreadsheets. A little bit more on that later on. It's well regarded among life cycle researchers and consultants, and it's obviously associated with a net zero net emissions agriculture CRC, and it's important that we remain aligned with them. The federal government agrees with us, obviously, having just announced the EOI that Claire was talking about earlier today, about bringing forward GHG emissions reporting standards to life, and GAF is the placeholder model while the standards are finalised. We wanted to make this engine pre-competitive because we prioritise the producer and the planet. It's great to be able to sleep at night knowing that best practice emissions calculations aren't locked up in one for-profit system, rather it is accessible through a wide variety of channels beyond AIA. Now, the promise of cross-sectoral emissions calculation engines are worthless unless you make it real and you make it quickly enough to keep up with the pace of trade and legislative change and consumer sentiment. And in less than 1 year after commencing development, we had launched the AIA Environmental Accounting Platform software and Emissions Calculator API. The software is free for farmers to use. You can log on right now. And we built it to serve those farmers that don't have access to other systems. We're all about access and impact. The API is available for integration by any ag tech business, so that's farm management software providers, or other organisations with technical capability. So that's sustainability consultancies, banks, big retailers, farm input suppliers, and so on. To use the API, integrators send us an access request email. We give them that access, then they can post farm information to the API and get the results. No farm data is ever stored in the API service. Speaking of worthless promises, a real solution is junk unless it has the backing of industry and proper in black and white governance and accountability. Anyone can grab the GAF files now because they're open and make a tool. Hey, cool, we've made a GAF tool. Unless you have actual governance in place, checks and balances, approvals, rejections, all that kind of stuff, you can't trust the tool. We built the EAP with funding from the 10 RDCs you can see here, and that investment comes with a commitment to demonstrate value for the levy payers, which is something we take very seriously. As part of that commitment, we recently updated our collaboration model to incorporate a lot more co-design with the RDCs and how they input the development of the EAP and sometimes input on how the GAF model will change. Hopefully I'll have time to talk about those. So that involves working with representatives from each commodity, then comparing our findings across all the commodities because we're cross-commodity, there's a lot of similarities between them, and we devise improvements that are useful for everyone. We take proposed changes to our technical advisory panel, as you can see here, and they either accept them, reject them, or suggest changes. The technical advisory panel, we should actually change that to technical accountability panel, exists to ensure that we are aligned with the National GG inventory and that we continue to evolve in a scientifically responsible way. You can check out their bios on their website, but you probably know who these people are already. The panel meets every few weeks, and these meetings are formal and they are technical and they always result in things to do, and we are accountable for doing them. It's not just like casual chit chat about cool methodologies. So the platform that's live now is covering a lot of commodities. We've got grains, beef, sheep, feedlot, goat, cotton, horticulture, poultry and eggs, pork, sugar, fish, dairy, buffalo, deer and forestry. I've been everywhere, man, and aquaculture, wine and rice are forthcoming. Plenty of benefits, running out of time, so I'm going to skip that. Biggest benefit is the financial benefit. So by making the engine cross-sectoral and negating the need for RDCs to make their own calculators, we've avoided, in principle, wastage of $52 million. We've avoided duplication of effort. We've avoided sending mixed messages to the market. Which calculator do I trust? This one, because it's for everybody. We've also freed up RDCs to spend their time and their money to work on other great things for their levy payers. This means a 17-to-1 benefit to cost ratio where every dollar that was spent developing the engine brings $17 of benefits to the industry. And if you want to know more, there's actually a report on our website. 30 seconds to go. It is live. 10 API integrators are signed up and using our emissions calculator API for their customers. So we're getting a lot of reach. There's some names I'd love to say, but the media releases aren't out yet. And more integrators are going through their trial period now. Log in, have a play yourself, aiaeap.com. What's next? We're working on a substantial usability uplift. Talked about that co-design with RDCs and people from different commodities. So that's going to be a really big thing. Thank you very much. And we're also, the next big piece, apart from tackling other sustainability topics like natural capital, waste, water stewardship and so on, the next big piece is sustainability credentials. I was fortunate enough to be part of the identifiers working group that was mentioned just before, and we're keeping an eye on the progress on the sustainability framework credentials stuff. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Paul. I think you had about 15 seconds left over by my clock, so you're doing really well. Okay, so our next talker is Fiona McCready, who is the program leader with Cool Soils Initiative. So the Cool Soils Initiative provides a science-backed framework for the food industry to support farmers in adopting sustainable, climate-smart farming practices. By aligning with Australian and global standards, CSI enables integrated sustainability reporting for multinational food companies while providing farmers with benchmark reports on emissions, practices and soil health to guide decision making. With over 20 years in the agricultural sector, Fiona has driven policy, advocacy, strategy and sustainability initiatives, particularly in the grains industry. She led the development of the Grains Sustainability Framework and now works with CSI to collaborate directly with farmers, technical experts and global supply chains to enhance Australia's position as a leader in low emission, climate smart agriculture. Please welcome Fiona to the stage.
Go back.
Did it go forward?
Yeah,
perfect. Big one goes forward.
Right, I'll do my time too. Thank you, and happy World Soil Day for tomorrow, so you need to be out there celebrating, just so start that off. Cool Soil, as the name says, it's very much about soil health being the kind of the cornerstone of farming. And I think we've heard a lot today. Having a number is one thing, understanding where it comes from, having really great farming systems is what this is all about. And for the companies that you see on here, in some ways strange bedfellows to have in the same initiative, but it's for them very much about buying products which are ingredients for what they make and sell. This is not about carbon farming. This is about how do we get resilience, climate smart products that we can buy, and that's the cornerstone of it. You'll also see that there are farming system groups involved, because we know that we actually have to work very directly with farmers. Every farm is unique, every solution is unique, and every farm is at different stage of their journey. So that's a really important piece. And the Sustainable Food Lab as well, that global connection is absolutely integral in the program. And we'll talk little bit about that we've heard today, but it's very much about we need to speak Australian, but we need to speak global too. So you saw this up before, and we've talked about it a lot today, but those companies had all set really ambitious targets. They were out there leading many years ago when certainly some governments weren't. But they didn't know how to do it in terms of some of the measurement, how they really backed those numbers and understood it. And in the same way that these are also a complex supply chain. So just as each of those companies buy multiple ingredients, so too every farmer grows multiple commodities. So it became really complex really quickly. And our job was to solve how we actually reported that for the Scope 3 reporting. So our solution was built up around three things. We deliver farm emission, that's gone back. We deliver farm emission reporting, which is all benchmarked. Really important, know your number, but understand where it sits in the region and what on earth you can do about it. That practice and insight is really critical. It's critical for the farmers, obviously, in terms of what's your number, why is that your number? What have you done this year that might have driven it? What's the season said that's influencing that number? But also, what have you done in that paddock for the last 5 years, which might be influencing it now? So that's really critical. And for the supply chain side of things, people in the glass offices think, I'll just start here and I've got a target here and all you have to do is draw the line. And what we really find is that they don't understand about the seasonal context of emission reporting, particularly intensities when it's all about emissions per tonne or emissions per kilo. So if you've got a great season right until the end where there's massive rain or there's drought, you've already outlaid your costs, you've outlaid your emissions, and you have nothing in your denominator to get your emission intensity low. The other thing I'd say about this is farmers don't sign up for long term. So the only thing that a farmer in CSI signs is a data sharing agreement, but that's sharing it with CSI program, which is backed by Charles Sturt Uni. No individual farm data goes through to the supply companies. And that's a really important thing. They nominate the regions they buy from, they nominate the crops they want reported, but we do not give them access to those farmers and that data. They're very comfortable getting a regional supply shed number. A couple of other pieces, obviously the science is important and it has to be relevant to industry, but that global piece is really important, and you can see why when we've got Mars and Kellogg's, PepsiCo sitting around the table, they have to be able to put Australian numbers up against Canada's numbers, US, Russia, anywhere else, and have a conversation that compares them. Let me just talk very quickly. We've got 200 farmers in the program at this stage. We started in 2018, so we've been going for a little while. We do soil sampling, we work with each of those farmers from 5 paddocks. We ask probably 30 questions, not only about your activity data and yield data, but also the practices and the paddock history, because that gives us the story. We've had a lot of engagement and retention of farmers in the program. They're actually really interested in going, why is this my number? What can I do about it? We support them in that practice change, but also in recognising what's really good now. And I think that's the other message we've heard today. Australia does lead this space in a lot of ways, but sometimes we just don't talk that up, and nor do we have the data to prove it. So that's really critical. And I will talk a little about the Cool Farm tool, and I'll show you some numbers. That's another calculator. We are calculator agnostic, but we do use that tool because that's the global tool that about 300 major food companies use. So we have to be in that game, but likewise we're talking to AIA about we also can produce reports through the AIA platform so that a farmer can take that to the bank. So what does a farmer actually get? They get a report like this for every paddock in the program. On the left-hand side, and you possibly can't see that very clearly, but it talks about emission sources. So where are your big levers, where are your big problems, and where are your big opportunities? It shows them where they sit compared to every other farmer in that region. So that's start of the benchmarking. And on the right-hand side, there are three different aspects as well. So there's an emission intensity by tonne that comes through, and that's really important from the supply chain company. That's the language they speak. But a farmer's making decisions on a hectare basis, so they also get that number, and then the soil organic carbon side as well. So where are you sitting? What are the opportunities that this information is showing you about what other farmers in your region are achieving? So they might be doing great things, and we then talk about what are the practices associated with those great results, and likewise explaining why some of those results may be really high. Again, could be seasonal conditions. So it's not only important to know your number, you've got to understand why you've got it, what you can do about it, and then what's actually your best leverage point. So don't go after, the really small things, go after the big ticket items is where we're going. And from the company's perspective, as I said, they don't get individual farm data, they get supply shed data, and what they get is something we call an impact report. So what's happened in that season by the crops that we report, what are the practices that have gone into growing it, and also what are the history over time, so we track that too. And then every individual company, and this is the confidential piece to them, is they have nominated crops and reporting and tonnages, and they get allocated from the pool of cool soils tonnage. They get allocated specific pieces, and that's effectively what they book for their Scope 3, but also what they can move to customers. And it's a really important part of the MRV process is the allocation and the movement, because that's where the potential for greenwashing or double counting really comes into play, and that's a crucial piece of what we've focused on. So what have been the results? This just gives you a bit of an idea for last harvest. This is for wheat, so the emission intensity number was 211. It's a bit so what if you don't understand the context. It's a great number, by the way, and I'll show you why. But also, since the program started, that's a reduction of 20 kilos of CO2 equivalent. So that's really important. It does bounce around, but it's great to see that the program's having that impact. The practices are really important. So we're actually tracking practice change. So hectares, how many more people are growing a legume? How many more are incorporating lime? These are important things. And for these global companies who are paying farmers in other countries to do things like minimum till, we can show actually incredibly high in Australia. And as I said, these last couple of slides are about showing where we are now. And for those in the room in the grains industry, this is a slide that CSIRO produced a few years ago to baseline the industry. So everything on this except the aqua is the CSIRO work. And it basically said a couple of things. Australia is actually doing really well. So that green bar is what CSIRO came up with. We've got some work to do in getting the numbers right from the World Food Lab Life Cycle Database, which is the other blue lines. And the CSI number is that aqua line. So when we're actually using real farm data and we're working very directly with farmers, that's where we sit. So it's a really great story to tell, and that's an important piece. It's also really important from the procurement perspective as well. So what we're actually hearing companies like Mars and PepsiCo say now is if I have an emission target, my immediate strategy might be to buy more from Australia because that's got a lower emission factor. So there's a real trade policy implication right now. That's the quickest way to reduce their emissions. Really interesting sort of change in dynamic. And the other thing, just to come back to that Cool Farm tool, is that I've shown you those first few numbers in the previous graph, but the last 3 column groups are the couple of versions of the global Cool Farm tool, which is 1 and 2, which gave reasonable handle numbers for Australia, but it was created with Europe and America in mind. It didn't have Australia-specific factors. We took that tool apart. We said, here's the scientific evidence that says these are the right emission factors, and this is on the right-hand side, the numbers that the regionalised tool came up with. So this is what the companies like Kellogg's and Mars and PepsiCo can use because it's generated from a global tool that's been regionalised. And that's about a 20% improvement just by making it right. So that's it for the initiative. We are expanding, going into lots of different crops, commodities and regions. I heard cotton and sheep talk today, so very keen to talk to you because we're moving into that space. Free for farmers, and we're happy to talk to anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Perfect timing. I was just about to start going like this and her next slide came up. Excellent. All right, so we're going to have one more speaker and then we're going to have a bit of a leg stretch. It'll be a very quick break, so give you about 15 minutes. I'll probably start getting you back in at about 10, of course, because it does take a little bit longer to get you seated. So the last speaker for this session, before we have our break, is Sudhir Yadav. He is the Senior Principal Research Fellow at Queensland Alliance for Agriculture and Food Innovation. So the Alliance at the University of Queensland is a world-leading research institute dedicated to delivering innovative solutions for agriculture and food industries. Sorry, my eyes are starting to get very tired now. The Alliance focuses on sustainable farming practices, enhancing productivity and addressing global challenges in agriculture and food systems. Sudhir's research spans sustainability indicators, traceability standards, life cycle assessment and benchmarking methodologies, all aimed at advancing sustainable farming practices, improving environmental stewardship and enhancing resource use efficiency. Please welcome Sudhir to the stage.
Thanks, Angela. It's like a test match that at the end of the day, if you want to accommodate one more over, you need to kind of rotate your bowler very fast. So that's what Angela is doing. I know it's a rapid talk, but I would still like to ask you to rotate your eyes specifically on left-hand side of the screen, on their perspective, and some of the key words that are mentioned there. I think since morning we have focused a lot on our perspective, and it's very clear that there is a momentum with us. At the same time, I think from today onward, tomorrow, what we need to think about is their perspective, what are the challenges. My name is Sudhir Yadav. I'm Associate Professor with the University of Queensland. Before starting, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owner and their custodianship of the land on which we meet. We started this work on zooming into AASF and other sustainability framework to understand how we can address their prospective challenges. And the idea was that after AASF, a number of industry has started to release their sustainability framework. And this is an example of sort of two framework, macro level AASF, and then we have Australian Green Industry Sustainability Framework. And we start to review these at a broader level, that what are the structure, how it is aligned, and we are talking about the common language. And I think, after lunch, we listened to ASF next step of actions, and it's very clear that they want to go into commodity metrics, which was obviously missing in the phase one. And this is where it was very clear that there was a confusion and demand, which is great thing about that how these can be tailored to a specific commodity. We spoke with number of stakeholders in terms of understanding their perspective. I think the one keyword which was coming from Grover was data burden. And it was very, very clear that that's something which is keeping them away. Researchers were doubting about how we will capture the heterogeneity of the system in different commodity-based system into something generic sustainability framework. While industry talk about number of things, mainly about different segment of the value chain, talking about the traceability, talking about the emerging things, for example, nature repair market, or I think we were talking about region. So there were new things emerging that how these kind of framework can link with that. So what we did, we started to use these macro level framework, and I think that's the vision to look into how we can zoom into particular commodity or particular crop. And we think about two levels of decision. The decision that is taken place at property level, at farm level, and decisions that are taken place specifically around a particular system, whether it is a canola, whether it's a wheat, whether it is cotton. The second part is the assessment methodology. I think one key word which perhaps did not come very clearly this morning was AI. I think this is where the things had changed significantly in last couple of years, and we have opportunity to speed up that development on the back end. And I just want to be clear that I'm saying about the back end in terms of using AI, and we keep the front end quite simple. So we developed the methodology and algorithm for benchmarking at the back end, as well as using machine learning for sustainability scoring, making sure, I think DJ, you were saying about we are leading the sustainability, and we have been asked, prove it. So that prove it is there, that we can show that how we have computed the sustainability. So we come up with zooming into that one. We simplify ASF into in some module which we can talk with growers. So come up with 6 modules. This is all around ASF, but the clear vision was, first one was reducing the data burden. It's slightly different than what Alan was saying this morning. We still focus on practices because we thought that using the machine learning, we can compute the impact indicators. So we thought, let's take this opportunity to capture the practices, because that will help us to go again and improve some of those areas. We use machine learning methods to do the baselining, to do the benchmarking. I think that has been wonderful learning. And the example that I'm going to present is for wheat. So we zoom into the data. Another major challenge is that when you go to the growers and try to collect the data, sometimes it is really you start to get headache about to deal with this when there is data, but there is no data. So you get the data in a format which is hard to use. Answer is AI. I think that, again, the time has changed. We are in a different era, and we can use that information to extract what we want to. So we develop algorithm to deal with textual information, qualitative data, quantitative data, mixed data, longitudinal data. So all that basically developing algorithm to deal with that. I'll quickly present 2 examples and then show the dashboard. This is a sort of, we are doing topic modeling that a industry A or B or C or any project is working with growers, and they give you the data sheet that, hey, we have this data sheet which we have collected. That's enough for us. I mean, there's no need to collect the data again. So we develop a natural language program model in terms of reading the data out of it, and then see that for how many standard or indicator this sheet can provide the data. At the same time, we use that opportunity to incentivize farmer that if you have this sort of data, we will give you sustainability scoring for keeping that record. So we factor that in while developing the topic modeling. The second example is zooming into detail. I think this is a time to zoom in further detail rather than cutting it short, because we can keep that on back end. So this is an example of grain yield, and why I presented this one, it shows two things. One is that we were able to do geographical segregation. This data is from Western Australia. By the way, all the data we used was already in the public domain. Welcome to the AI world. We were able to scan 10,000 documents in 1 week time and able to generate this information. Again, if it's not there, obviously we can't do it. So it's not like AI is magical. If it's not there, we cannot do it. We did the segregation by geography, but we also did segregation by the product type. For example, if industry is selling or exporting it as a hard wheat, noodle white, premium white, or standard white, we segregated that from a sustainability scoring. So we do have consider industry perspective. We did consider grower perspective when they are opting certain practice. We developed a dashboard. This is work in progress, but I thought to show this one as an example. So there are two dashboard module. One is for the self-assessment for the growers. So they can look at it and they can see what practices, how they are rated. But in this example, what you see that there are particular module and there is a particular variety. I think Scepter is the example we have taken here. So now, if you opt a particular variety, it has a trait against disease, which means you're applying less pesticide. So far, we haven't thought, and this is just an example, to give a sustainability scoring by picking a variety because it is reducing the pesticide application. So this is an example where we are able to factor in lot of trait of different practices and develop the sustainability scoring. And what you see in the dashboard at the bottom is that this is also telling that how that practice is aligned with AASF. So it also at the same time tell at macro level. So I think the key message is for us is listening to their perspective and then kind of addressing that. And I think this era is something where we should not be afraid of detail. I think details can be handled. Less detail is risky. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Siddhya. I had to have a laugh when you said AI isn't magical. If it's not there, we can't create it. That's excellent. All right, everybody, I'm going to give you a 15-minute comfort break. So if we'd like to just grab a coffee or a tea, depending on what you like at this time of the day, stretch our legs, and we'll be back here ready to go in 15 minutes. Thank you. Okay, everybody, if I can ask you to start taking your seats, we'll kick off the rest of our sustainability showcase. All right, everybody, we'll start. You've got 30 seconds. Righto, everybody, take your seats, please. All right, everybody, I'll get you sitting down, please, and we're going to kick off with the remaining sustainability showcase. All right, I will. Come on, guys. I said short. All right. We're going to keep moving because I know a few people's planes have been cancelled and they've just come to tell me that they're going to have to be leaving early, but also I know it's the end of a long day. We've still got another few presentations to get through, so thank you very much for getting back here. So we're going to jump back into the sustainability showcase, and our next, we have a co-presenting team here for the next one. So we have Jane Seaborn, who is the CEO of Freshcare, and Leon Southam-Rogers, who is the environmental scientist and CFO of AHR, which is the Applied Horticultural Research. So I'm going to give you the background on all of them. So there's three there, bear with me. So Freshcare is an Australian-owned organisation providing internationally recognised assurance standards for the fresh produce supply chain and wine grape industries. Applied Horticultural Research, or AHR, is a leader in independent research and development for the horticultural industry, delivering practical solutions to support growers, industry bodies and government agencies in addressing key challenges. Jane leads Freshcare with a focus on emerging technologies and best practices to support Australian producers in achieving global recognition for sustainable production. With an MBA and a background in rural business, Jane brings deep industry knowledge and a commitment to mentoring and governance excellence. Liam specialises in sustainability and the intersection of horticulture and climate change. With expertise in sustainable soil health, emissions reduction and productivity improvements, Liam applies innovative practices to support a more resilient horticultural sector. Please welcome Jane and Liam to the stage.
Thank you very much. We're going to do this in two parts. I'm really going to talk about the why we're doing this project and for whom, and then Liam's going to bring the technical side into it. But for those of you who don't know, horticulture is over 240 crops. I think we've got 40 or 50 peak industry bodies, and growers in horticulture have actually been doing certification for well on 20 plus years now. They have an annual audit every year, the smallest grower to the largest who wishes to be certified and supply into the supply chain has to be certified. That certification is 191 elements of evidence for food safety and quality, 47 of which are environmental practices. We also have on top of that an environmental standards program, which is recognised by the Great Barrier Reef Authority, of another 100 plus elements of evidence. There is a duplication there. What we have been told very clearly by growers in the horticulture space is that they do enough compliance now. They see a lot of duplication, and they're looking towards Freshcare to solve duplication, and they do not want to have anything new other than a bolt-on. Add something onto what we're already doing, but do not have anything that will stand beside it. Why are they putting this pressure on Freshcare? There's about 95% of the market uses the Freshcare standard because it was written by growers for growers. It is now internationally benchmarked to the Global Food Safety Initiative, which has put enormous pressure on the program, made it as big as what it is, and our job is to now make sure that growers start getting some recognition for the work that they are actually doing on farm. So our project, as I say, is in two parts. We're actually focusing on what the requirements are. So what is it that farmers are doing on farm? What are they doing for food safety and quality? What are they doing already for sustainability? How do we then bring that into the standard to show certification to sustainability? And the reason we've got a bit of credibility in this space is the wine industry standards that we've been talking about, they were talking about earlier. The underpinning standard to that is Freshcare. It's the Freshcare environmental program allows over, we've already got about 1,000 growers in the wine industry already on the Sustainable Trust mark. It's underpinned by Freshcare. So that's what we're bringing to the table. We have employed a researcher as part of our project who is actually doing the global search as to what we should be having in the standard. We're using the Australian Agricultural Sustainability Framework and the Horticulture Sustainability Framework as our guiding principles. But at the end of the day, our job is to make sure that the data that is being collected and has been collected on farm for over 20 years is actually recognised through any solutions that we come up with. And very clearly, there had better not be any duplications, is what the farmers are telling me. So over to Liam to tell you now how we're going to do this.
Thank you, Jane. I will refer to my notes to keep me on time. We are working on a clear pathway to an industry-owned horticultural platform designed to complement the many farm management systems used by growers. Our vision is to create a system that can seamlessly share data with farm software to produce trusted, certifiable reports, to capture key environmental practices, to provide Australian horticulturists with new efficiency and productivity benefits. We are now in a project scoping phase with Freshcare, Map of Ag and Hort Innovation, covering 3 focus areas. The first area is identifying data points and the system requirements. And so that will involve understanding what data is already digitised and what is available on farm. To understand what data is needed to meet the market access requirements, and Freshcare is the key partner in that. Crucially, we need to understand what growers want us to do with the data and how they want their data to be used. We understand some growers really see the benefits in sustainability reporting and the market access benefits, and others really do not want to know about it. We're hoping to learn from other agricultural industries and the other data exchanges present in Australian agriculture. There are many out there, and we are really open to working with the other exchanges and data systems available. And we'll be completing a comprehensive consultation process over the next few months, and I'll go into more detail on that shortly. The second key area of our scoping project is designing a platform. The key priorities for this are avoiding duplication of data and to create efficiency. We'll be working with direct API access to farm management systems and to industry platforms like the AIA greenhouse gas accounting platform. Data will be owned by the growers with very strict permissioning, and data will match and meet the NFF data code. We believe we can verify the quality of data through certification schemes such as Freshcare, and that will add a lot of value to that farm data when reporting for sustainability schemes. The platform is very, very open to industry collaboration, and we want to work with as many partners out there who are willing to work with horticulture. We do not want to recreate something that already exists. And I'll repeat that. We do not want to recreate something that already exists. We want to work with existing systems and build functionality where we need to. And lastly, we'll be assessing the cost benefit of a platform for horticulture. So that is ensuring we provide value to the growers particularly and other stakeholders in the industry, and provide productivity benefits to growers, really supporting them with decision making and improving labour efficiency. And so you can see the diagram there on the screen. That's an example of what this platform might look like. So it's really connecting with farm management systems and existing data, processing that through a data exchange, either developed by the project, our partner Map of Ag or others, or work with existing systems out there, and then sharing data through the Freshcare system and other schemes out there. It's important to make sure it aligns with the Hort sustainability framework and the AASF. And so it's quite a short scoping phase, this project, and it's really focused on industry consultations. So early next year, we'll be conducting interviews and workshops with technology providers, so farm management systems, sensor providers, and these sorts of things. We'll also be holding workshops with growers, peak industry bodies, and industry representatives. We will be asking them to nominate representatives that align with their values and views, and invite them to a co-design workshop in April next year. And so that co-design workshop will be really about advising Hort Innovation on how they should be investing in the future in a system like this. I'll hand back to Jane now.
Okay, thank you very much. So just quickly to sum it up, what we're trying to do is make sure that what is already happening on farm today is utilised. I think that we're creating languages at the moment about farmers have suddenly got to start doing all this reporting. They're already doing it today because they run good farm management systems. They run efficient systems. We just need to be able to showcase that for them, and that's what we really see that we will be doing. And it's about not putting any more work on them. And just very quickly, we're running another program, which is the RegTech project. And for horticulture alone, we've already identified 220 compliance requirements. Freshcare is one. 191 elements is one. There are 220 that apply to horticulture annually. So we've just got to try and start understanding now what this duplication is that's out there and how we can solve it. And this is one step of saying we're not going to do it again. We're going to try and get it right this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane and Liam. Please leave me the controls. Well, it's not me, actually, it's the next speaker. All right, so our next cab off the rank, Sarah Stevens, who is the Sustainable Land Management Team Leader from the Gulf Savannah Natural Resources Management. So, is she here? Yes, excellent. There we go. I was going to say, I couldn't see you because you're hiding behind the TV. Good. Just had to check you hadn't left. All right, so Gulf Savannah NRM is a non-profit natural resource management organisation dedicated to strengthening communities, supporting local industries and cultivating living landscapes in northern Queensland. The organisation combines science, technology and land care to enhance productivity for farmers and graziers while maintaining healthy ecosystems and addressing the unique challenges of northern Queensland. For Sarah, since shifting back from outback aviation to natural resource management 7 years ago, she has worked with extensive beef and intensive agricultural enterprises in the SA arid lands and Gulf Savannah NRM regions. An advocate for environmental stewardship as, sorry, I thought that was my alarm telling me my time was up, as key to productive and profitable agriculture, she is dedicated to helping small and family businesses to find alignment between their environmental and production realities and industry sustainability goals. Please join me in welcoming Sarah to the stage. Thank you. I lost you.
Big button goes forward. Got it. All right. Hi. As Ange just said, I'm Sarah Stevens. I'm Sustainable Land Management Team Leader with Gulf Savannah NRM, and I'm going to talk today about using the framework to demonstrate and communicate sustainability through a CRC Northern Australia cotton grains and cattle project. So Gulf Savannah is one of 54 NRM organisations across Australia, and our region hugs the bottom of Cape York, stretching from Mareeba to Karumba. 234,000 square kilometres and 4 river catchments flowing into the Gulf of Carpentaria. Most of the region is dry tropical savanna land with low fertility. Nearly 90% of land use is extensive beef grazing on native pastures with conservative stocking rates of 4 head per 100 hectares. A monsoonal climate A monsoonal climate brings a 4-month wet season from December to March and an 8-month long dry. This means that whatever pasture grows in the wet season has to last until the next wet season. And it also means that for most of the year, the quality of pasture is poor. Urea supplementation to increase utilisation of hayed-off pasture is standard practice, but when confronted with extended dry seasons or drought, high-quality protein supplement feed has to be trucked in to see cattle through. There are, however, some areas, oh my God, I'm not very good at this clicky thing. There are, however, thank you, some areas of high fertility basalt soils and frontage country that are capable of, and in a few places already supporting, grain and forage crops. The North Queensland Cotton Grain Cattle Mixed Farming System program is one of 6 projects being delivered under the CRC Northern Australia Cotton Grains and Cattle program. An R&D collaboration between universities, RDCs, government, private enterprise and NRM. The project is investigating diversification options for Northern Australian beef enterprises as a way to improve drought resilience. The focus is on the local production of forage and grain crops, in particular grain sorghum, with the in particular grain sorghum as a high protein cattle feed, with potential for crop rotations for soil health, weed control, and cottonseed back into the cattle system. There are several research teams looking at this from different angles, including cotton pest and disease and canopy management in humid far northern environments, soil water capture, conservation and crop use efficiency, non-cotton crop rotations for cattle supplementation, but also for emerging high-value grain markets and environmental services, live weight gain and methane emissions of cattle fed a range of locally grown crop and fodder supplements, and the comparative advantage of grazing and conservation feed systems to optimise utilisation and animal production value of feed produced on farm. As the NRM in the project, Gulf Savannah's focus is on the environmental sustainability of this diversification of reasonably marginal extensive beef country into cropping, and the alignment of industry sustainability frameworks with northern production systems. For us, the final product of the project is an environmental stewardship manual. This will guide North Queensland cattle and cropping enterprises to identify key practices in their production systems that will align them with the sustainability goals and market, consumer and finance expectations. It'll also show them how to track and record those practices without the need of a consultant or a scientist as a starting point. There's been a lot of talk today about science-backed data, but and we also heard from Emily about privilege in this whole system. For our producers, the prohibitive costs of getting a scientist to demonstrate that your production practices are scientific is an issue. We'll end up with no data at all. So we're trying to create a system where it's easy to collect, they can collect it themselves, and it's not a burden on them. So the first thing I did in the project was to create a monster spreadsheet to collate the environmental categories, criteria, principles, priorities, indicators, topics, targets from the cotton, beef, grains and agnostic Australian agricultural sustainability framework. This landed me on soil, water, biodiversity, carbon, chemicals and biosecurity. I know I'm not the only person in the room who has one of these spreadsheets, but I was only looking at environmental indicators, so full respect to those of you who looked at more industries and more themes. So once I had my magnificent spreadsheet, I then looked at a wide range of industry best management practice tools, guides, to translate that complexity of indicators and targets into management practices relevant to North Queensland. It was important to ensure that not only did the practices align with the frameworks, but they also reflect the on-ground realities of North Queensland environment and regionally specific practices such as wet season spelling and cool burning. Over the last 18 months, myself and one of our project officers have taken that list out to producers, and after a pannikin of water from the trough, tea, worked through which of these are you already doing, which aren't you doing, and why. Is it because it's not financially viable, not relevant to your production system, doesn't work in the north, you want to but you can't afford it? Analysis of these essentially surveys has given us a set of key practices for soil, water, biodiversity, etc., that we know make sense in the north and are environmentally and importantly economically sustainable. These practices will form the basis of the stewardship manual, which will delve into what it is, why would you do it, how to do it, where to find more information and resources, and how to collect data on what you're doing. And as we've heard many times today, that data collection piece is absolutely critical. We have been and will continue to do this process through testing and refining with producers. And I know the C word gets bandied around a fair bit and I don't like to use it, but we are determined to co-design this stewardship manual with producers. So there's some buy-in, a sense of ownership. What I don't want to do is spend 4 years on a manual that no producer reads. So what have we learned? Through our engagement with producers, we've identified several interesting insights into applying the AASF. A starting point for sustainability. So the framework can help producers to prioritise and focus their efforts on integrating or improving on the practices with the most relevance and benefit to their environmental, production and economic sustainability, and to demonstrating their sustainability footprint. Building on existing practices. We've helped producers to recognise that environmentally sustainable practices that align with the targets of the AASF are often already integral to their operations because they make both production and economic sense. There's always room for improvement, but a lot of what they do, because it's good for land, stock and business, is sustainability indicators in action. Leveraging the framework. By supporting producers in aligning with the framework, we hope that they'll be able to leverage the extensive work that the AASF is doing in promoting the sustainability of the Australian industry and use that to the benefit of their own businesses and their regional industries. And finally, normalising the language. By using the AASF as a consistent reference point to translate sustainability goals into unfarmed practices, we're hoping to normalise the language of the frameworks and hopefully increase knowledge and recognition of them and the benefits of aligning with them. We have a fair bit of work ahead of us still in pulling the manual together, but in the 3 years I've been working on this project, I have noticed a significant shift in attitudes towards sustainability. When I first started, the word sustainability would invoke an awful lot of eye rolling or just complete glazing over. Now when I have these conversations with producers, I get a sense that they understand what's coming. Most of them are flat out running their businesses and it's on a to-do list, but they appreciate the updates and insights. We all know the costs and risks associated with moving to more sustainable farming practices, and measuring and reporting on them sits with the farmers. If we want them to fulfil the expectation to produce more, using less while operating sustainably, we need to support them in every way we can. And I hope this project will go some way in doing that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah, and I think there was quite a lot of laughter when you showed your Excel spreadsheet, because I think a lot of people in this room have similar Excel spreadsheets as you mentioned, and I know the AASF team, there was a lot of laughter around that as well amongst ourselves. All right, so we have 2 more TED Talks, so we're going to move on to our next one, and again we have a co-presentation for this one. So we have Sarah Parker, who is the Executive Officer of the Victorian Farmers Markets Association, and Amanda McLaren, who is the Director of the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority. So as the Executive Officer of the VFMA, Sarah brings extensive experience in agriculture, research and community development. She holds a Master's in Agriculture and Rural Development, is a graduate of the NFF diploma program, and serves in leadership roles such as Chair of the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority. Sarah and her husband operate an irrigated dairy farm in Victoria. Amanda is a passionate advocate for agriculture and community leadership. With a Master's in Teaching, she champions agricultural education, rural development and regenerative farming. Amanda is a Director of the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority, a GAICD graduate, and former Mayor of Strathbogie Shire. She and her husband run a successful poultry and beef business in central Victoria. So I'd like to welcome Sarah and Amanda to the stage. Big button goes forward.
Yeah, okay. It's like trying to drive a tractor on the farm, which I don't do. So are we moving forward? Sorry, my notes just closed and we'll just reopen them. So we're actually going to take you down to probably some smaller scale farming, and we're going to actually have a look at farmers markets within Victoria, but also on a global scale, because the Victorian Farmers Markets Association is actually part of a global group called the World Farmers Markets Coalition, which is actually a UN project that came about around issues of food security and food supply around the world during COVID and after COVID. So just to introduce ourselves, yes, I'm the EO of the Victorian Farmers Markets Association, but I don't actually work alone. I work for a board of 8 directors who are all involved in food security, food policy and food production. And I also work with over 600 producers and members of the association, of which Amanda is one, and I've brought her along as Exhibit A. Sorry, Amanda, to call you. I've already spoken about the World Farmers Markets Coalition. The role that they play at the moment is actually reinvigorating markets and readdressing the way markets are seen around the world. Part of that is using the farmers' markets in whatever country they're in whatever region, to look at the sustainability, biodiversity and whatever other issues are in a regional area, and look at how the farmers' markets can readdress issues that are related to the SDGs at a UN level, global level, and then moving down into regional levels. Some of the work they're doing, and some cold-face examples would be in South America, they're looking at countries like Peru, where the farmers' markets still hold the rights, well, the producers at those markets still hold the rights to some of the rarest forms of potatoes. And those potatoes, the genetics and the genomics, may be sought after in the future as we look at addressing issues around production and climate change. And obviously the farmers' markets, which we've told you a little bit about, but I'm just going to skip through some of these slides. We actually have 600 members, and that is growing. We've got over 30 markets. We just launched a new one on the weekend at Docklands. So the markets aren't just about food, sustainability, biodiversity. They're also about creating a sense of place and community. And we're often at the cold face of talking to consumers, customers and potential customers and supporters of agriculture as they purchase their food, and actually talk to the farmers themselves. Because we have a rule at all of our accredited farmers markets, the people selling the food and with the stall must actually be the producers of the food. And I'm going to hand you over to hear Amanda start talking very passionately about agriculture.
Thank you. And I was just going to share with you a little bit about our journey. My husband and I purchased our farm 20 plus years ago, and we've been on a journey in the small scale sector for that time. And we have been at farmers markets, well, not for the full 20 years, probably for about 16 of those years. And it was interesting, we moved into that market because we weren't in control of our market with our cattle. So you can see from our logo, we've got cattle, pigs and chickens. And we had, up until probably 3 or 4 years ago, we had cattle, pigs and chickens, but we had to get rid of the pigs because in Victoria you can't farm pigs and chickens on the same farm anymore. But we still have the cattle and we have the chickens, and we supply our chickens to farmers markets every weekend. We also supply to providors, butcher shops and to specialty high-end restaurants. So chances are if you've had a really nice meal somewhere in Melbourne, you might have had a Yapanya chicken. We are very focused around the production of our animals. We're very focused, we're surrounded, our farm's lovely, it's surrounded by national parks, so sustainability is a really key focus for my husband Ian and I. And that includes things around the chicken's diet. We have a special diet made at a local feed mill, so we reduce food miles. We are very keen on the animal welfare, and because we're eyeballing our customers, as we say, we speak to our customers and we know our customers and they know us. We get to talk about that story. We get to talk about the sustainable nature of our business. We get to talk about how we grow our chickens, what we do, what we feed them and that sort of thing. And that provides a little bit of, I think, comfort for customers if they can have a conversation with you, and that is something that's really beneficial at the farmers markets. We are told that our birds have good old-fashioned flavour. We get a lot of people turn around and say, your chicken tastes like what my grandma used to cook and that sort of thing. And I think that that's just a really interesting connection that we have with our customers that we don't necessarily get from our beef, because our beef goes through the normal markets, our chicken we control the marketing of. We are direct to the consumer via the Victorian Farmers Markets Association, and the Victorian Farmers Markets Association has been incredibly supportive of small scale. So I like to think of small scale as we are small in volume, but we're large in value in terms of our commodities. So my chickens wholesale for $34 a bird. They're not a $10 cooked chook at Coles. They're totally different. But there's room in the market for everybody. So there is room in the market for the higher volume, lower value, and there's room in the market for us. And we are all about supporting our communities and our circular economy, and there's going to be a really interesting challenge that we're facing that Sarah's going to share with you as well.
So we've had a look at the Australian Sustainability Framework and then had to think about where do we fit in that framework, and we thought we'd just provide some examples. So the first one we looked at was economic resilience. So there's been a rapid expansion of markets globally and within Australia. Examples and numbers around that, there were around 70 markets in 2004 that were accredited, grew to 180 in 2015, and at last count there were over 300 best practice markets trading on a regular basis. Our markets are significantly contributing to local economies. We're supporting small, medium-scale farmers and food producers, and some of those actually move on from our farmers market system into the commercial world. One of the examples that comes to mind is Bulla mushrooms. They actually started with a market stall at farmers markets, now supply Coles and Woolies with mushrooms. We're also providing opportunities for our producers where they actually sell at the markets, but they also sell outside of the markets. So a number of our producers have online stalls, direct-to-consumer platforms that they then actually work together to sell whatever produce they produce. The other thing we thought we'd point out was during COVID, the farmers markets had to be quite agile and had a large capacity to adopt and implement new practices as they were introduced in Victoria. And these markets actually continued to trade through the entire time, offering, the normal shopping routes that consumers were used to. And they also pivoted, and I hate that word because I think of irrigation, but I'll use it now. They pivoted to look at things like home delivery produce boxes, online order portals, and pick up points right throughout Victoria for their produce.
I should add in there, COVID was really traumatic for, I know for many people in terms of lockdowns and the way we had to conduct ourselves during that time, but for the small scale producers who were attending farmers markets, the rules changed almost daily. We had to be incredibly resilient during that time to just get our product to market, and I've got to say it was probably one of the most stressful times that I've ever experienced, but it was also the busiest in terms of our business.
And one thing that we also need to say is regardless of what sort of markets we are, we always actually follow all the national, state regulations and local food regulations as well before farmers even are able to actually come to a market. We also looked around the sustainability, environmental stewardship framework. We support sustainability and biodiversity. A lot of our farmers have regen ag practices and they're growing their business through those practices. The other thing is a number of our farmers actually support biodiversity with local examples around heritage varieties of horticulture, cropping and breeds of livestock that they sell at the farmers markets. And I think I'm going to hand over to Amanda to talk about the engagement of people, communities and animals, and no doubt you'll hear a little bit of education in there as well.
Thanks, Sarah. So, this is I guess, my passion area in terms of farming and agriculture. I was Mayor of Strathbogie Shire for 4 years. Strathbogie Shire, our biggest sector was agriculture, still is. And I was all about looking at how we could support agriculture in our sector and in our local government area. I then went on to become Thank you, you drive it. Okay. I then went on to become the chair of the Hume Regional Development Australia Committee, and again focused on agriculture, and particularly with a focus around agricultural education, because I was worried that the average age of our farmers in Strathbogie was increasing year on year, which is an unusual across Victoria and also the state. And what we were seeing was that we weren't getting many of the young people into agriculture, and I was wondering why that was. And we didn't have a dedicated agricultural high school. So knowing that other states did, Victoria doesn't, it led me down a pathway. I went back and did a Masters of Teaching. I'm now teaching agriculture, and I'm really keen to involve the community and focus on entrepreneurship, focus on actually community building around agriculture, and hopefully see an agricultural secondary school here in Victoria in the near future. I think the important thing about farmers markets in relation to this space around communication and education is it is also the area where we also support the social licence for farming. So we get asked a lot of questions at farmers markets as farmers. A lot of the questions, quite frankly, would probably frighten the socks off you guys. You know, they're the sorts of questions that you think, oh my goodness, you are so distant from where your food comes from. Let's have a chat about that. So whenever we get those sort of questions coming into us, I'm more than happy to step aside and have a conversation with somebody around their agricultural production, and whether it's, at a small scale or whether it's something that, people wanting to know more broadly. I think that we do need to make sure that in terms of education, people understand where their food and fibre comes from, and that they have the ability and they feel comfortable coming up and talking to us.
Okay, we can give them the 2-minute signal.
1 minute. Oh, you better go.
That's okay.
Sarah's
We'll
got something
jump
to
on.
say. Yeah.
So I've got a couple of things. One thing we've thought about is if we are going to be at the coalface of talking with consumers, we actually have to have data that support our claims. So with the support of the Victorian government, we've embarked on a market metrics project. That project is looking at a whole lot of issues and items that are related to farmers markets. Some of the things around sustainability that we're looking at is how far people are travelling to come to a market, the mode of transport they're travelling with, but also how far the food that they're buying is actually travelling and how it's packaged. We're also looking at what's influencing their decisions in terms of purchasing and what areas of sustainability, what words are used to actually influence that purchase. And then we're looking at the data in terms of the spend. What are they spending more money on? What are they spending less money on? How is that influenced? Because what that does is that enables our farmers markets to know what produce range they need to offer, how they are connecting with those consumers that attend our markets, and where do we go next with the claims that we have. Because reality is that if we actually want to remain realistic and we want to remain at the forefront of people's minds when they are making purchasing decisions, we have to have the data to prove that our story is facts. And I think I will just drop off there. One other thing I might actually raise is we've currently got a challenge in our farmers markets. Last week, where the world operates, the small producers in Victoria got sent an email from a processor to be told they had 14 days to find somewhere else to take their meat. And it's about finding a little bit of balance. So I haven't had much sleep. I've got a lot of farmers making a lot of phone calls, quite stressed, but we'll work our way through it. But it's about finding the middle line in terms of sustainability for us at the moment is how do we support the small producers, but also actually make sure that they are competitive in terms of price and service like the large. So you'll probably see a few headlines and news articles coming out of the VFMA and our many producers in the future as we campaign for that. And I'll leave Amanda with the clicker. I hate driving things. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, you're doing well. Thank you, Sarah and Amanda. I have to admit, when Sarah phoned and said, I wanted to see if farmers markets would be interested, I have to admit I'd never actually thought about any kind of governance structures behind farmers markets, and the fact there's association and they're actually doing these kinds of things, we thought would make a really interesting talk for today as well. So thank you very much for sharing those insights. All right, moving on to last but not least. And so we have Megan Hill, who is the Sustainability and Environmental, is the Manager for Sustainability and Environment Policy at Australian Pork. So Australian Pork, if you didn't pick up on the vibe from Margot this morning telling us to get pork on our Forkless Christmas, is the national representative body for the Australian pig producers, dedicated to advancing the industry through innovation, sustainability and policy development. Megan leads sustainability and environmental policy at APL, bringing 20 years of experience in environmental management, climate policy and resource recovery. Before joining APL, Megan served as sustainability lead at Dairy Australia and held senior roles in the Victorian government. With a passion for science and agriculture, Megan is excited to share insights into the sustainability initiatives driving the Australian pork industry. So please welcome to the stage, Megan.
Excellent. All right, thanks. Lucky last. Thank you to everyone that persisted. And I just have to say apologies in advance to the ladies who presented before me, because I'm sorry about your pigs, because I'm here to talk to you about why pigs are the magical animals. So that's a little bit awkward, but that's okay. That's it. Yeah, so I can't actually see. Oh, there it is. Here to talk to you today to convince you that pigs are actually the magical animal, but not necessarily in the way that you think. It's not just about the bacon and the ham and the pork chops and all the get your pork on your fork that Margot loves saying. There's a whole lot more to the story that you might not have thought about. And it's all about a topic that it's one of my favourites and so hot right now, circular economy. The simple fact is that pork production is by its very nature circular. Why? Because it's good for our pigs and our people, improved environmental outcomes, and it makes really good business sense. Pigs provide a huge range of products, many of which we use every day, and probably you don't even know that you're doing it. All of these products come from our pigs, grown and cared for within farms who've embedded the 4 pillars of our own sustainability framework: pigs, people, planet and prosperity. In our industry and across ag, it's the same at dairy. Profit is not a dirty word. Someone said earlier today, you can't be green if you're in the red, and that is absolutely true. Profitable industries have the resources to invest in the infrastructure, innovations and training that continually improve animal welfare, support the industry's workers and look after our environment. So we're not resting on our laurels here. The pork industry is constantly focusing on improving on best practice, and there's great opportunities to both grow markets for pork and pig products and do it even more sustainably. Did that? Yeah. Oh, no. Back. Oh, yes. Good place to start, as with everybody else today, is with our sustainability framework. So this was released in 2021, so it's a relatively new framework, and it picks up on the great work that was already underway across the industry. Released a baseline report this year, and it found a few really good facts here. Farms have reduced their emissions by 70% since the 1980s. So that means that pork is Australia's second lowest protein at only 3.3 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of live weight produced. 29% of our farms are using piggery byproducts or renewable energy. 78% of pork producers are reusing effluent on their crops. 44% are recycling water on farm. 58% are composting bedding and manure. 15% are using manufacturing food waste to feed their animals. And 27% are using agricultural wastes. 49% are composting mortalities. There's so many pig and pig production materials that are reused and repurposed. The Australian pig industry will also have a goal for zero waste off farm by 2025, and we're almost there on that one. There's a few sticking points of materials that are either currently not recyclable or materials which currently don't have a process to recycle them, like soft plastics, currently no avenue for that. Other things like gloves, medical gloves, and other things used in pig reproduction. But as great as these results are, I think they still undersell the pig for the magical animal that it is. We mentioned earlier that pigs are in your everyday life. Well, you'll be surprised where all of these pig products are. The number of ways to fully utilise a pig carcass is extensive, as nearly almost every part of the animal can be used in various industries. Modern processing aims to achieve zero waste, and the result is that there's over 180 products in everyday use that are derived from pigs. Nothing is wasted. For pork industry, circular economy is simply business as usual because it's commercially advantageous as well as being environmentally advantageous. And by doing all this, oh, hang on, I've got another slide. There we go. In doing all of this, the industry, which is largely Australian-based supply chain, is contributing to regional economies and communities via economic value, investment and employment. In some areas, the industry is the major employer, investing in new skills and supporting a range of diverse careers. There's a few impressive stats for you here. The industry's contribution to Australia's GDP in 22-23 was more than $6 billion. 34,600 full-time equivalent jobs nationally, predominantly in regional Victoria. $3 billion in household income in 22-23. And if we have a look at per pig in regional communities, it's $5,400 per sow to the local community. But if you add a processing plant in the local area, then that rises to $7,708 for each animal. And that's, could also look at it at jobs, 21 jobs per 1,000 sows or 36 per 1,000 sows if you've got that processing capacity. Maybe I'll leave that one for a sec. As I said earlier, the industry's not resting on our laurels. There's a lot of opportunities to expand all of these benefits. With the right settings and support, we can help tackle some of Australia's biggest challenges. The first one is food waste. Food waste is absolutely filling landfills. The retail sector alone contributes 527 kilotons of food waste. It's 3% of our annual greenhouse gas emissions, and it's just a waste, really, just sticking in landfill. Pigs are omnivores, so they can eat a wide variety of pre-consumer waste. We've got one amazing farm in New South Wales that is currently using 13,500 tonnes per year of food waste that would otherwise go to landfill. To do this, the farmer's got some special depackaging equipment to enable them to quickly and easily open all their packaging and pop that in with their feed. We've got another farm in Victoria that's also invested in depackaging equipment and now takes 350 tonnes a week of bulk canned food and waste for feed. So that's giving them significant cost savings. These are really great examples, but that's actually only 10 to 20% of commercial herds that currently divert food from primary production and manufacturing, and only using a very small proportion of the potentially available food. So there's a lot of growth that could happen there. As the RDC for the pork industry, APL's been funding research into opportunities to utilise some more of this waste by creating shelf-stable products from food waste, things like palletisation methods and transport of liquid-based pig feed. There's a huge opportunity to invest, and we're just not thinking about food waste as a waste, but as a resource. Another big opportunity is in nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals and medical uses. I have to say that nutraceuticals was a new term for me. It includes things like collagen, heparin medication, skin grafts and heart valves, not all nutraceuticals, some pharmaceuticals. Pig rendering's a process that helps unlock the entire value of the pig. Abattoir byproduct goes in and medical and food grade resources come out. But I think one of the biggest opportunities is an area that I always like working on, which is very weird to be your favourite, but effluent. Pig effluent is the unsung hero of pig production, often seen by our regulators as more of a management issue than the valuable resource that it actually is. But our farmers, they see the value. It contains micro and macronutrients and organic matter that can build soil fertility, structure and moisture holding capacity. Valuable nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium can be captured so you can replace other kinds of fertilisers. And it can be composted with other agricultural waste materials to produce soil conditioners and fertilisers. We've got a fantastic farm in Victoria, and I've put a few photos. I asked him to text me some photos last week and he sent these ones. It was a beautiful day. These great photos of his factory. He's invested in composting on site. He bought a bagging you can see on the top right, sort of a bagging conveyor belt robot, and using that, he's bagging up a whole range of really great compost products that you can buy at the nursery, and they're really nice products. Hopefully next time I'll go up there with an empty boot, maybe I can pinch some, because my garden would love it too. Really beautiful products. From a problem product, he's transformed that effluent into a thriving soil business that now comprises about 40% of his total farm profit. We can also use effluent to generate biogas, and he also actually generates biogas as well. It's been about a 30-year project for them, but they've got a really great setup. You can either use covered pond systems, or you can collect your methane by feeding your effluent into a biodigester. Some of the biodigesting systems, you can even take waste from external sources and stick it in there with the pig effluent, and so that can help solve some of our broader economic waste issues. This is a great idea because it increases energy independence and security, reduces pork's greenhouse gas emissions as well. So pork is actually only 2% of agricultural emissions, but effluent is 60% of our total emissions, which is quite a lot, so a massive opportunity there. I wanted to give the final word to one of our excellent farmers. Now, hopefully the video will work. We weren't exactly sure if it was going to, but we'll give it a go. I don't know how to get it to play, but I'll just introduce you to Edwina. She's the chair of the New South Wales Pork Committee and an APL delegate. Oh, and she and her family exemplify the approach.
To be producing something that I know is sustainable and is really, good for the world, and to be doing our bit. So we've set up a system where we can capture our methane gas from our pig manure and turn it into electricity. It's fantastic because that was our 4th biggest cost, and we have now completely eliminated that and turned it into a revenue item. We also feed our pigs a lot of food waste. That's pretty exciting because it saves us buying a lot of grain. Last year we used 13,500 tonnes of food waste products, so things that would have otherwise gone to landfill. We can produce a lot of pork at a very affordable price. We can do it without a huge amount of land, using food waste, recycling our manure, even making our own electricity. So I think farms like ours are the answer to food security.
So definitely worth a minute of my time. You could see her covered ponds there and her depackaging facility as well. So that's it from me. Hopefully I've convinced you that pigs are indeed the magical animal, and you'll get some more pork on your fork. Totally on message as well. Good to see. Thank you so much.